Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. John White, WebMD's Chief Medical Officer and host of the Spotlight On series from WebMD's Health Discovered podcast. For this special two-part episode, you'll hear up close and personal journeys about being diagnosed with a rare type of cancer, multiple myeloma.
I started in myeloma nearly 25 years ago. And at that time, the average expectation of life in someone with myeloma was maybe 1 to 2 years. But even just in this last 10 to 12 years, we have doubled, if not tripled, the average survival of patients. I saw a new patient this week, and we had this conversation that based on what we've done over the last decade, my expectation is that patient's going to live more than 10 years.
Listen to Health Discovered on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, and welcome to the Proactive Caregiving Podcast. As a CPA with over 20 years as an industry accountant, Jessica stepped away from the corporate world to become a full-time caregiver for her mother. Having learned invaluable lessons along the way, she is now here to share those with you and to invite you to join her on this caregiver's journey. Here is your host, Jessica Cannon.
Hello, everybody. I am so glad you're here with me today. I am the Proactive Caregiver, and I specialize in educating others on how to be proactive by empowering you, the caregiver. If you cannot take care of yourself, then you cannot take care of your loved one. You know, caregivers are created to fulfill many different needs, and sometimes it's for more than one person at a time. And oftentimes, they do not acknowledge they are a caregiver because of the relationship with their loved ones. That feeling of obligation before compassion is usually the first response. But this obligation also hides the burden caregiving becomes, which creates this domino effect of many other emotions. We go through regret, lack of choice, self-doubt, guilt, fear, and what I call my inner runaway. Sometimes I found myself thinking, I don't want to do this anymore because of the arguing, and then feeling incredibly guilty shortly thereafter for having that thought in the first place. Part of shouldering this burden is fighting the loss of hope. This is why I believe moments in time happen for a reason. Although we have free will to do many things in life, it is easy to become complacent or stuck in a routine that keeps us from living our intended purpose. For example, my next guest went from owning an online clothing store in the Netherlands to a caregiver life coach. If you find yourself asking, why me? Why now? Like I did, then I feel that it's the universe giving you a nudge to go in a different direction. Miriam Baldwin, a dear friend I met last year as another one of those moments intended for a reason, found herself asking those questions of why and how. After caregiving for 20 years for her husband battling diabetes and a brother after a stroke, the answer came in an unexpected life course correction. Her love and compassion to care for her family taught her many valuable lessons, which she now shares with other caregivers through her Caregiver 2.0 6-week online course. That's why I'm so excited to have Miriam here with me today. Hi, Miriam. Thanks for coming on with me today.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast show. I'm so excited, and I heard that you already told our listeners that I've been taking care of my husband. We met each other back in 1998. And like you mentioned before, he was a diabetic, and he suffered from kidney failure as of 1999. And in 2003, he had a major kidney pancreas transplant surgery. Wow. He needed 2 surgeries. So the first one was in November 2003, and the second one was 3 months later. So in a short time, he had 2 major surgeries. And while I took care of my husband, at that time we weren't married yet, by the way, I I burnt out. My plate was too full.
Wow.
Sometimes we caregivers ignore the signs of our body saying, okay, I need a timeout. Our plate gets so full. And first of all, we don't do it on purpose. We do it because we care and we want to offer our loved ones help. But like you mentioned before, the question why this is happening to us might come to our minds. But at the same time, we wonder if there are possibilities to be both productive and take care of our loved one.
Right.
So I remember that after his name is Martin, after his first major surgery, we had a conversation with a social worker at the hospital. And she asked him, Martin, how are you doing? And he said, of course. He said, well, finally, I'm feeling better. I'm doing much better. I'm feeling great. I feel like the quality of my life has improved. So yeah, I'm feeling better. Thank you for asking. And then she said, Miriam, how are you doing? Jessica, I cried. I sobbed for 15 minutes because of all the heaviness that was on my shoulders.
Absolutely.
And my world fell apart. This is not how I imagined my life to be. I burnt out. And I was so mad at that woman at that time because of her question.
Right.
Because I didn't want Martin to see me like this. I was the one who was taking care of him. So I should be strong.
Right.
And I felt like I was a superhero. And superheroes don't cry. Superheroes don't get tired.
Right.
Superheroes can go on for 24/7. So I really wanted to punch that woman.
Yep, I know the feeling.
When she asked me the question and I started crying, I was mad and I said, I don't want my husband to see me like this. But actually, this question saved my life. When I got home, I looked in the mirror and I said, Miriam, what are you going to do for you? What are you going to do for Miriam? Do you want to go on like this? I knew the answer, Jessica, but I couldn't get those words out of my mouth. I looked at myself again and I said, do you want to go on like this?
Right.
And I started crying again because I knew I couldn't go on like this. What if something would happen to me? Who would take care of Martin? So after all of this happened, I had a conversation with Martin. It was December 2003 because he had to stay in the hospital for a couple of weeks. And I decided to leave and go to Suriname. I was born in Suriname, South America, and leave my husband for a week. It's a 9-hour flight. And during that flight, I thought of so many things. It was hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Imagine your husband recovering from a major surgery, and you don't know if his body will accept the organs or reject them.
Right.
And you still have to leave for a week. It was hard. But when I got home, I call it my home, of course. My mom picked me up at the airport. And when I saw my mom, I started crying again. And she said, oh my gosh, my child, you need to rest. You need to take care of yourself. And that week, I think I slept 12 of those 24 hours a day.
I can imagine.
I called Martin twice a day. So yeah, we talked on the phone, but it's not the same
No.
like being in person in the same room with your husband to be then. So when I got back, we heard that he needed his second surgery. So there was fear again, there was anxiety again, because it was the second major surgery. But I was also coping with burnout. And it was a tough ride. It was a tough ride. But I started using, I always call them my tools and my techniques. For instance, I started with meditation because,
Good.
yeah, it really calms me in the morning. To give you an idea,
Yes.
when I wake up, I pray first and then I meditate. Then I take a shower. And while I'm enjoying my breakfast, I journal for 3 to 5 minutes.
Perfect.
And I always start with one positive thought in the morning. It can be a simple thing like, okay, Miriam, today you will do 10 minutes self-care. And I schedule it. I schedule my self-care moments. So this is how I started. I started with 5 minutes. And when I saw that it worked, I said, okay, now I can go for 10 minutes. And those 10
Yes.
minutes became 15, 15, 20, 20, 25.
Right.
Because what I experienced is that I transferred positive energy to Martin because I was feeling much better.
Exactly.
I started owning my well-being, but I started small. It didn't happen overnight. It took me
Exactly.
months.
And that's how we have to do it. We have to start somewhere, but we have to
Yeah,
start small so that we can sustain that. It's just like when I started trying to do, I did the same. I would start my mornings with prayer and meditation, and then I had eventually started adding some yoga poses, some stretches. Because your caregiving day, sometimes you end up being too sedentary and just sitting for hours that you wonder why you're aching, your body's hurting, or their body's hurting, as there's not enough movement. And so when I started doing that, it's like, okay, I'm gonna try and do 5 push-ups.
yeah,
And I couldn't do it at first. I really couldn't. So I was like, okay, let's try and do 2 or 3. And I had to build up over uh, weeks into months and eventually getting up to 20, 25, and just feeling so good and positive and being able to have that genuine smile when I
yeah.
was in front of my mom.
Yeah, it's such an amazing feeling, and now I can easily talk about it. But back then, it's more than 17 years ago now. Back then, when I started, I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
The reason I didn't talk about it as a caregiver, my caregiver's life, is that I thought, maybe they will think I'm weak, or
Yep.
if I ask someone for help, no, I won't do it. I've got my pride, and they will think I can't handle the situation. That's what I thought. But the result of not asking for help was that I was the caregiver, the cook, cleaner, driver, groceries woman. So that all of that was too much. It stressed me. So I had to learn to ask for help. And when I saw that help from others created self care moments for me, I promised myself that no matter what happens, I would keep asking for help. I even asked the medical professionals, nurses and doctors for help. I
Good.
asked my neighbors for help. I asked my mom-in-law. I didn't want to ask her for help in the beginning because I thought, oh my gosh, that poor woman, she is 70 plus.
Right.
But she loved cooking for us, for instance. She loved preparing dinner or lunch for her son and for me, and I could do something else
Mm-hmm.
instead of cooking. So I had to, it's not that I had to put aside my pride, but I had to do something about um, asking for help. And um, some of my friends even offered to drive me to the hospital because it was a 50-minute drive to the hospital
Oh,
one
wow.
way, 50 minutes. And before they found out that I burned out, my day, I'm going to give you an idea of what my day looked like. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning
Mm-hmm.
and I started at the office at 7:30.
Mm.
I worked until 3 p.m., 3:30, went home with public transport, took the car, drove to the hospital,
Mm.
50 minutes, stayed with Martin until 9:30 p.m., came back home, checked email, did some household things, and went to bed maybe at 12
Mm.
midnight. And then the next morning, 5:30 p.m., the same. And this went on for weeks, maybe months.
Mm.
So that's why I was tired. I was trying to do it all by myself.
Yeah.
And it was simply too much. And that's why I tell my clients, please know that asking for help is okay.
It's okay and it's necessary because we can't do it all as much as we want
No,
to and feel that we have to. We can't do it all. And
no,
that's something that for me was even hard to accept because I didn't want to, for example, with caring before mom moved in with us and with her in her home, I didn't want to impose extra burden on my family. And so I tried to do everything the same way. And it was just really hard to accept that I can't do everything.
no, no. And, sometimes I think, Miriam, do you know a hospital in the world that offers 24/7 help? Do you know a hospital in the world where there's a nurse available 24/7?
Right.
No. Why do
No.
you want to do that? Why do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Yes, because you love your loved one.
Mm-hmm.
I love my husband. I love my brother. But it's you simply can't do it. And whenever I feel like, okay, um, I'm getting tired, then I take a step back and I remember myself, okay, do you know how dark it was when you burnt out? Do you remember how dark it was? Do you remember how you felt?
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of it, I'm like, okay, no, 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 I need a rest, time out.
Exactly. You've got to
Yeah,
love yourself just as much as you love your loved one.
exactly. And, once again, it didn't happen overnight. It took me months. It wasn't easy, but I had to take baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do it in a week. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. So take your time and start with those baby steps because in the long run, you will benefit from it, sorry.
Absolutely.
And you're not the only one who's going to benefit from it. Your loved ones, your
Mm-hmm.
community, everybody will benefit from it.
Exactly.
And like you said, you have to love yourself first. Love yourself. Give yourself permission to see possibilities and opportunities and grab them.
Yes.
Because sometimes the first thing I said when people asked me, Miriam, do you want to go out for dinner or have a drink? The first thing I said, no, I don't have time.
Yep.
Without
Exactly.
even thinking what socializing could do for me. I could get friends over or go have a drink with a friend or
Mm-hmm.
family members. But the first thing I said, no, I don't have time. Make time.
Yes.
Even if it's half an hour, make time. And now during the pandemic, we do more virtual cocktail party or a coffee break or whatever.
And
But it's
and
possible.
and that's when you realize it is possible and we do have the time. It's just
Yeah.
trying to commit to that and actually convince ourselves that we need, it's not that we don't have the time, but we have to make the time.
Make the time, exactly. And that's why, Jessica, that's why I schedule my self-care moments.
Perfect. So what are your favorite self-care
Ooh.
practices?
I have a lot. Meditation.
Yes, that is my
Journaling.
favorite too.
Yeah, journaling. I'm writing a book about my caregiver's journey.
Nice.
I love it. I never thought that I would love writing a book. I really enjoy. I have moments when I'm crying, but I also have moments when I'm laughing laughing about things that happened in my life. But I also enjoy um, a manicure. I also enjoy listening to an audiobook. I also enjoy listening to music. So it depends on my mood.
Right.
Or I even enjoy taking a ride and listening to some music and sing. So it depends on my mood. I have many things I can enjoy. And self-care, when you say self-care, many people think you have to go to a spa a whole day. As much as I love it, I can do it every week, going to the spa. So I try to enjoy those little moments, even if it's for 5 minutes. Sometimes I even do breathing techniques, taking 5 deep breaths if I don't have a lot of time. And then that's my self-care moment. But I also set boundaries. If Martin, for instance, asks me, Miriam, can you help me with this or that? And I've scheduled that time for myself. Now I'm able to say, hon, I've scheduled this time for myself now, but I can help you later. Is
Good
that
for
okay?
you.
Yeah. I have to own my well-being because I pulled myself out of a mess, out of that dark place called burnout.
Right.
And I promised myself that I will never, ever, ever go back again to that place.
Good.
So I have to make sure that I'm feeling okay. And it also has to do with communication, by the way. That's something I learned as well, because I often thought, what will they think? Why don't you ask them?
Right. Yes,
Why don't you
exactly.
ask them? And this is something I started doing when Martin had his surgery. It was necessary. But when my brother had a stroke, it was even more important because he couldn't talk. So it was so important for me to communicate with him in a different way and ask him how he felt and what I felt and what I could do for him, what he could expect from me as his younger sister. And it really worked. Communication is so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that helps reduce a lot of stress as well, because I know I found myself trying to, like I mentioned, not wanting to impose that burden on someone else, but also making my own assumptions and not asking how someone felt and just assuming that they wouldn't want to help me. It's too much for them, but they really wanted to and they were trying to. And so that communication back and forth and just those simple questions, what do you need? How can I help you? what would
Yeah.
make things easier for you, what would take off some stress or burden. And that communication back and forth keeps the relationship going in a way that
Yeah.
makes it not feel burdensome, or that you're still your sister and brother relationship, and it's not entirely caregiver like, or husband and spouse, because I can only imagine that the changes of the relationship that would take place between the husband
Yeah.
and wife.
Yeah. And, my brother had a stroke, and in 2012, I talked to him on the phone while he had a stroke. I was at the office, so I had to call the paramedics while I was at the office, and he was alone at home. So they found him behind the door. He couldn't walk anymore. We were in a lot of fear because we simply didn't know if he would make it. And we celebrated his 47th birthday in the ICU with him. And the first 2 weeks after the stroke, he doesn't remember anything. He forgot my name. He knew I was his sister, but he was partially paralyzed. The right side of his body was paralyzed. And this morning, I thought about a couple of years after he had a stroke, he could walk again. We went on a family cruise with him, and I celebrated my birthday, and it was a wonderful time. I enjoyed every single moment, especially sipping on those delicious cocktails. And he it was so funny to see him enjoying walking again, those little things. But there was a time when he was in the hospital. I showered him every single day together with his ex-wife. Because he was paralyzed, he couldn't do anything, of course. And the nurses could do a quick fresh up every day, but not a shower. And I asked him if it was okay if he was okay with me showering him. And he couldn't talk, so he mumbled something and looked away. And I could see that he felt uncomfortable, and I totally understood. To be honest, the idea of seeing my brother, a grown man, naked and cleaning him made me feel the same way he did.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, I was so determined to help him. And his hygiene was a priority. So we sometimes have to do things that can embarrass both our loved ones and us. So we tend not to take action because we respect the feelings of our loved ones.
Right.
And showering him every single day made him feel much better. And I told him that he didn't have to be ashamed of me as his younger sister taking care of him. But I also explained the benefits if he was showered every day. I kind of empowered him.
Good.
But I also visualized the result when he was showered, what it could mean to him, what it could lead to, like a speedy recovery. And that made it easier for me to take action because, like I said before, the idea of seeing your brother naked, it was kind of awkward. But I did it. And now that I think back, I'm happy I did because 3 months later, after the stroke, he started walking and talking again.
That's awesome.
And now he says, you have no idea how I felt. In the beginning, I felt kind of embarrassed, but I do remember how I felt after the shower. I was tired, but I felt so good. I felt like, okay, I feel good and I'm gonna recover. So communication is important because he couldn't talk. I had to ask him, Is this what you mean? Is this what you feel right now? And when he started talking again, sometimes he couldn't find the right words, and then he was kind of frustrated, and then he would say something that might hurt me. And then I would say, his name is Patrick. Patrick, you just said something, and it kind of hurt me. And then he would say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. It came out like that, but I didn't mean it like that. And then I would say, but that's how I felt. You know,
Right.
That's why we have to communicate, because sometimes you can't find the right words, and that's okay. But know that I will tell you, and you can ask me anything. So that's our relationship right now.
That's beautiful. And that's the hope. And just listening to that, I hear how you went from that place of darkness and you found ways through it to keep your hope alive and navigate through this journey and maintain the relationships, two individual relationships with that hope.
Yeah. We never lost hope. It wasn't easy. First with Martin, after surgery, and then with my brother Patrick. It was those moments, I will never forget them, but they made me stronger.
Yes.
Because I felt, I know that you should never lose hope. And hope, how can I say this? Hope helped us get through this, all of us. And we promise, Patrick always says, God gave me a second chance, and I am so enjoying life to the max now.
Good.
Because he can walk again, talk again. His right arm isn't functioning, but he can do many things on his own. He still needs my help and the help of the rest of the family, because I'm not doing it alone, thankfully. But he still needs some caregiving with other medical issues, just like Martin. But it's not like it was before. Not at all. So it's funny because a couple of months ago in August 2020, I had closed my web shop. I owned a web shop and I had closed it in 2019. And I didn't know at that time what I wanted to do. The only thing I knew is that I wanted to continue working with people. I'm a people's person.
Yes.
And in August 2020, I talked to a friend, and we met each other back in 2019, and we tried to schedule a Zoom call, just a meet and greet. And finally in 2020, beginning of August, we had our Zoom meet and greet, and she explained who she was. And I said, oh, nice. Finally, I can see you. And then it was my turn. Who's Miriam? And I told my story. And I was so busy talking, Jessica, and I didn't look at the screen. And after 3 minutes, I looked at the screen and I saw that she was in tears. And I apologized. I said, oh, this wasn't my intention. I'm so sorry. And maybe I should write a book.
Yes.
And she said, oh, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you. Why don't you write a book? I said, me? No, I don't think so. She said, Miriam, think about it. I said, okay, I will think about it. On August 22nd, I started writing a book about my caregiver's journey. Perfect. 6 months later, I'm so happy that I talked to her, and she's my writing coach. And I enjoy all the moments, all the stories that will be in my book. It will not only be my caregiver's journey that I write about. I also ask questions. So the reader The reader will sometimes think, oh no, Miriam, please don't go there. Sometimes we have to be uncomfortable to be
Yes.
comfortable.
And sometimes that's where the lessons come. I mean, just
Yeah,
as you explained with the showering, that's sometimes that's where the lessons
yeah,
come out of, those
yeah.
uncomfortable moments.
Uncomfortable moments, and it's necessary. So, like I said before, it will not only be my story. I also ask question because I want the reader. It's for both caregivers and non-caregivers. My book. They will learn. They will grow on a personal level,
Yes.
and I will do anything to prevent people from burning out because it's not a pretty place.
No, it isn't. And we need the help. So, how did your Caregiver 2.0 evolve into what it is today?
When I started writing about my book, I discovered that I have so much content, so much I want to share. And I thought, okay, Miriam, what if you put all your content in a 6-week online program? At first, I didn't know if it would be a 6-week or a 4-week program, but I discovered that it's too much. So I started writing all my content. And that's how my 6-week online program started. And I launched it a couple of months ago. And in this program, Caregiver 2.0, I will teach fellow caregivers how to own their well-being, how to revitalize their own energy, how to fill their own cup before they help someone else.
Perfect.
So they can help their loved ones or patients if they are nurses from their own overflow.
This is great.
But I will focus on a couple of things, and one of the things is asking for help.
Yes.
Why, how, and when.
I love this.
Yeah. So that's
This is wonderful.
yeah, I'm so excited. I always tell clients, listen, you're starting with Caregiver 2.0. I love you. I love you for showing up for yourself. I love you for loving yourself because you are here right now.
Absolutely. And this is yet another example of why I feel so strongly about things happen for a reason. Because when I was going through similar scenarios and getting to the point of needing to write, I started my journaling as my own cathartic, healing process. And it evolved into something more. But I would get those self doubt thoughts that said, no one needs to know this story, no one will benefit from it. And then I met you. And through you, we were able to connect with and now we both have a connection with our editor, which is fabulous because the stories that we are able to share for other caregivers that come from all different walks of life, they're going to benefit so much from lessons learned and help them alleviate their stress, their own guilt and fear and doubt or regret, and turn it around into something totally different
Yeah,
and positive so then they can touch other lives themselves.
it's so important. And the question, why me? I turned it and I said, why not me?
Exactly.
Why not me?
Beautiful.
Miriam, you are worthy of a wonderful life too. And this is something I tell myself every single day.
Yes.
Miriam, you're worthy of a wonderful life too, and I am enough. I deserve it. Within my situation, my caregiver's journey is not Jessica's journey. It's not another fellow caregiver's journey.
Right.
But every caregiver can make time, for self-care. Self-care is one of the modules of my 6-week online program. It's necessary. But before you can do self-care, you need to love yourself first. And before you learn to love yourself, you must be able to ask questions, see possibilities, grab opportunities. So it's not only self-care, there's more you need to do. You need to take action, but I can help you with that. I can definitely help you with that.
Yes.
I have been there, and it doesn't matter where a fellow caregiver is in her or his journey. It doesn't matter. As long as they are willing to give themselves permission to see that they are worthy of a wonderful life too, and that they deserve it. And why? I think a friend of mine, a fellow caregiver, who also lives in America, she said that they have done research that 30% of the caregivers who take care of their loved ones die before the person they take care of. And
unfortunately,
that's a lot.
It's sad because we give so much to our loved ones and forget to give to ourselves, and we drain our well, basically. And it is a sad reality that we have to rectify. Through learning from each other and through programs like yours and our material, our books that we will be releasing eventually, it needs a spotlight for other caregivers to learn from, because there's also another part of this. There's a lot of research now that's surfacing suggesting a connection between diabetes and Alzheimer's, for example. That those connections aren't fully understood yet, but through the studies, they're able to connect with other patients and caregivers to understand that there is a suggestion between diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes, that makes people living with type 2 diabetes, puts them at a higher risk of eventually developing Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And so it is so vital to start self-care regimen and broaden that.
It's
and then teaching our children the same.
Yeah, it's so important, and setting boundaries is is something I had to learn. Saying no without hurting someone.
Yes.
Saying no without hurting someone. Saying no is also taking care of yourself.
Right.
And it's so difficult for many people, including caregivers, to say no, because we want to keep offering our help. And I was there too. I simply wanted to do too much for my brother. And then I realized, Miriam, no, his left arm is still functioning. Why don't you let him brush his teeth on his own with his left hand? And then I said, okay, this works. You don't have to do everything for him. So that's when I started realizing that I wanted to do too much for him. And that's not necessary. My plate will get too full. Take a step back and watch, and I am so happy. I am so happy I started with a 6-week online program with writing my book. I hope that it will be published in June or July of this year. July, sorry. When I see the results, that caregivers can say, oh, I'm going out for dinner, or I'm having a drink with a friend, something they didn't do before, because they simply didn't give themselves the permission to do it.
Right.
To live again, enjoy the small things. It doesn't always have to be weekend getaway, or especially now during the pandemic.
Exactly.
But enjoy those small happy moments. Start small. And I really have the privilege and pleasure to help them.
I'm so glad you do. So for the caregivers who are needing this, how do they find you? How do they find the Caregiver 2.0 program?
They can find me on my website, www.miriambaldwin.com, and they can book a free call first. I love to talk to people first and see them via Zoom. I'm on Clubhouse, Miriam Baldwin, Instagram, Miriam Baldwin, Facebook, Miriam Baldwin, LinkedIn, Miriam Baldwin, and that's where they can find me.
Excellent.
I'm more than willing to help. Like I said before, I pulled myself out of a mess. And because of my past experience and the lesson I learned, I have the privilege and pleasure to help fellow caregivers owning their well-being as they take care of their loved one. It's an incredible job. Sometimes they are not appreciated, but I also want to say I appreciate you for what you are doing, caregiver, and I see you, I hear you, and I hope that you're willing to go on a journey with me.
Absolutely. Go on a journey with me and share the experience and learn as we grow together.
Yep.
That's beautiful. So can you give me, let's see, if I call you today and I am just distraught, would you be able to tell me one thing that I needed to do in the moment to help me?
Yeah, sure.
Refocus me. What would you be able to tell me?
I would tell you, okay, the first thing I will tell you, take a deep breath.
Yes.
Inhale calmness, exhale anxiety. And
Beautiful.
tell me what's bothering you. And then we start from there.
Exactly. And that's how simple it is to start, and it is life-changing.
Yeah.
So this is something I'm so glad you are doing, and you will reach caregivers everywhere, all over this world that are willing and ready to step out and acknowledge, I can't do it all. I need the help, and they can find Miriam Baldwin. Miriam, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. This has been a very inspiring story.
My pleasure. It was an honor and my pleasure to share my story and the tips. And I hope, of course, just like you said, that caregivers from all over the world, I see you, I hear you, I appreciate you for what you're doing. Thank you so much for having me, Jessica.
Definitely. I hope this gave you more food for thought, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time, be proactive. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about proactive caregiving and to hear other episodes of this podcast, please visit www.jessicalazelcannon.com. This podcast is produced by Cannon Light Media, LLC, www.cannonlightmedia.com. Music provided by Chris Paradise.
Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino this year.
I was only playing for fun, so winning this was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's #1 social casino experience. It's serious fun. With over 80 casino-style games to choose from, you too could win life-changing amounts of cash. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and give them a whirl. That's ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void or prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of a winner.